Hey everyone. A couple of days ago, I went on the Typical Skeptic podcast with my friend Robert, and I did my first 90-minute interview, solo interview. Normally I have Diane with me when I go on there, but this time I was completely by myself, and I think I did a pretty good job. Other than being under the weather and not feeling too well, I think the interview went really smooth, and there was just a 100% positive response from everybody. And I want to thank Robert for having me on. I want to thank everyone who participated in the live chat, and I just want to thank everybody who's supporting this project and all the new subscribers. And I'm going to have some more videos out over the next few days. So I'll see you soon, and I hope you enjoy the video. Take care.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Typical Skeptic Podcast. If you're listening on Apple or iTunes or Spotify, remember to follow me on there. And if you're on YouTube, leave a comment or whatever, share it with your friends. But today I have back with me Nathan Sizek. He's a 48-year-old contactee, and he's from the Voices of Orion project. And a lot of weird information has surfaced about star seeds, about the SSP, and about everything that's going on with the reincarnation cycle. And I thought, who better to have back on my show than Nathan? Nathan follows all this stuff to a T, and he doesn't just follow it because he's a contactee. He has dialed in information about what's going on in these areas. Like, for example, I was told that I was in the secret space program, and I don't know if I believe it 100%, but Nathan's going to talk to me about how my consciousness could possibly being used in it, because he specializes in these areas. That's what type of guest he is. He's working on a project. Again, it's called the Voices of Orion project, and on YouTube it's Haujean Contactee, and that's the name of his page. I believe it's Haujean Contactee, and I'll put links in the description. But I want to give him a big warm welcome to the show. Nathan, come up. Thank you for coming back on my show. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Robert. Thank you for having me. And now you've got me nervous, so I'm going to screw this up, but I think I'll be fine though.
I think you'll deliver. The thing is that we were having problems, but we still are. I see our bandwidth is going in and out, so somebody must not want this meeting happening. But where do you want to start off? Do you want to start off with what happened to you lately that you posted on your channel, or do you want to get right into the secret space program stuff? Because
I say we get into that afterward. I think we just need to get into the secret space program stuff. I think that's really on the top of people's minds. And since I've come back and made a few videos after my hiatus, that's been really the highest viewed video that I've had.
Yeah.
So what I'd like you to do, Robert, is just tell me a little bit about what you've gone through or what you've experienced, or actually what you know about yourself in regard to this SSP thing. So I'm curious about that. You explain that to me, and I'll go into this whole thing.
Well, I don't know much. All I know is that, I have problems sleeping at night. It's very sporadic, on and off, nightmares sometimes. I wake up with marks on me, weird marks. I've taken pictures and sent them to people. I sent them to the lady who told me this, is Dr. Kim. She said to me, you're in the SSP. They're using your consciousness. And I didn't want to believe it. And I don't know if I still do. But then when I woke up with marks on me, I messaged her again. I said, I have these marks on me. And I was like, they're weird. They look like somebody could have poked me in certain areas. And, trust me, I'm never around needles or anything crazy like that. You know what I mean? I haven't gotten any shots or anything lately. I know that. But unless something was biting me, but she said that wasn't it. She said that was actually a succubus attack, which is separate from the SSP stuff. But this is just a little bit of what's going on. I've just had a history of not a great life, typical starseed, Matrix type life, you know what I mean? Always drama, and not drama, but it's not easy for any of us, right? I don't know. So
absolutely not.
I don't know how much I want to delve into my personal life, but that gives you a little bit of a background, and I can go deeper if you want me to, but I mean, it's not real thorough,
Well, if you're not comfortable with it, we can save that for maybe a private chat. I'll be the one that has to bare my soul today. So anyway, yeah, I'm really fascinated to learn how this one knows about how they take your consciousness out, because that's something that a lot of people aren't aware of. So let me First, let me talk about, are you familiar with how timelines work? And I guess some of your guests need a refresher because they haven't seen the video that I put out on timeline consciousness simulation. So
No,
let me go into that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we don't know. So yeah, definitely. Could you tell? Yeah.
Sure. I'm going to use the prompts that I used last time. So we're going to start with these bamboo sticks here. I don't have any good prompts. This was just something I threw together. Okay, if you think of a timeline, and say this is the timeline that we're on, and think of this as a stream of ideas or thoughts in the mind of source. And if you think about it as like a highway where you have a bunch of lanes, just think of the lanes as infinite. So you can look in every direction and there's no end to it, because every possibility that could happen from the past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously. But you have something called a timeline, which is just essentially a sequence of events in the mind of source, because we're just thoughts in a never-ending story in an infinite mind. Just for the most part, concepts in an infinite imagination. So if you're the extraterrestrial, say you're the Galactic Federation or any other say any other ET group, for example, and you want to create a parallel timeline that you can control, what they would do is you would take a timeline that fits the criteria that you want. So you'd have a timeline right here. And once you've found the correct timeline, I'm going to give you an example. In this timeline, let's just say hypothetically, this portion of the universe isn't at war. The reptilians aren't at war with the GF. There's no Orion group. It's more or less just a group of cooperating races that are working on a project called humanity on Earth, and they want to socially engineer them. Okay, and they want to socially engineer them on the planet itself, and they want to socially engineer them on an off-planet sort of scenario, a secret space program, if you will. So this is over here is the timeline that has the wars, that has the reptilians fighting with the GF, it's got the Orion group, it's got everything that you can imagine that you're hearing from this SSP story. So what they do is they will take and cross into this timeline here that they've selected. But because the way the source consciousness works, there's a couple of rules. And the first rule is that memories cannot be forgotten, which means that we are eternal because we are nothing but memories in the source consciousness. So memories cannot be forgotten and they can't be altered or overwritten. So in other words, if you cross into this timeline over here, you do not alter this timeline. This timeline remains the same and everyone in it doesn't notice a thing and nothing changes. But once you cross into it and begin to manipulate it, you actually create a third timeline that's independent of the two, but it's a combination of both. It'll have the same characteristics as timeline number 2, which is the ones where everyone's at war. But at the same time, it also has the convergence memory of crossing into it and then creating a third timeline. So you have everything that took place up to the point of convergence, and then everything that changed after the point of convergence. So now you're dealing with a third timeline, which I've referred to, or actually they refer to as a timeline consciousness simulation. Once they've created this, they have a timeline that they can put people into and take them out of at their will, and they can control it externally. So it essentially becomes an augmented or an artificial reality that's totally real for those on the timeline, but it's completely controllable by the extraterrestrial presence using technology. So that's what a timeline consciousness simulation is.
Question.
So,
can they split the soul though? Can they actually split the soul to where the soul is experiencing multiple awarenesses in each of those timelines, but one soul doesn't have one part of the soul doesn't have recognition that it's the other parts of the soul are being used in other timelines? Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great question. That's what they're doing. If I was told, honestly, I'm going to tell you straight up, you're in the SSP, you're a starseed. I think you already know that, but the SSP stuff's new. So yes, the answer is yes. They can actually split your soul and put the fragment into the same timeline with you. So how this would work is we're going to use Tony Rodriguez as probably the best example of this. So Tony's a starseed. I don't know if he's aware of that, but that's the information that I got on him. He volunteered for this. You volunteered for this. I volunteered for the crap assignment that I got. We all volunteer. In my case, and I think this goes for all of us, you volunteer like you're going into the military, but you don't get to pick what you do. So this is where you fall, and the way it works is whatever you're good at or whatever you've been used in the past for, they will do a personality profile on you. They will look at everything that you've done, and they will put you where you are most appropriately utilized. So let's take Tony Rodriguez, for example. He's a child, he's laying in his bed, he's asleep. They come and they can do this remotely. And they can also do it at a facility. And I have a soul transference memory of going in the machine that does the soul splitting. And it also can put you on a timeline consciousness simulation. It's the same technology, but it can be done remotely. So what they did with Tony is they fractured his consciousness without his conscious knowledge of it. They took a carbon copy of his soul and they put it on an alternative timeline that they created called a timeline consciousness simulation. They put him in a clone body, and then the entire process, or actually the entire scenario, begins to unfold. You can do these stacked on top of each other. I've got approximately 30 lifetimes in Egypt, and I couldn't figure out how I had so many of these. And I'll get to this in a little bit. This is
Wait, does that also mean that you're living those lives in Egypt now because maybe time doesn't exist? Maybe there is no time and space. Time is a man-made thing, or is that just something I heard?
It's a perception, and it's kind of an illusion, just like the physical reality that we're in. And we think we're alive, but we're actually just thoughts in the source consciousness.
Yeah.
Technically, it's better that way because we're eternal and there's no limitations to our consciousness, and it gives us the freedom to just about everything. And Source has no intent on forgetting all of us, because that's a separate subject. But just to give you an idea, some of the wording in Scripture is actually pretty accurate when it says that the Creator is lonely. Eventually, you have an infinite mind that becomes self-aware and has absolutely no company and nothing to do. So the source consciousness fractured itself into everything and now sees and experiences itself through all of us. So that's essentially Source in a nutshell, and the Creator and what we really are in a nutshell as well. So anyway, yes, these lifetimes can be stacked one on top of each other. The ones that I had in Egypt are all past. They're all over with. I do not think that I have anything going on right now other than what's being done with me, which I'll get to in a little bit. But anyway, yeah, these lifetimes can be done consecutively. They can be stacked on top of each other. And what happens is once you go through a series of them, you go back to your ET civilization, they put you into a psychiatric facility, they induce amnesia, and you instantaneously, once they remove you and extract you from here, and then they go through a process with you where you recall these memories, just like Tony Rodriguez has been doing. And but they do it under controlled conditions where they control your consciousness, and they give you psychotherapy with it. So you may spend a couple of years in a psychiatric facility before you can return back to society. And it's something that's done where a lot of us volunteer, especially people who are on the hierarchy or the hierarchical system of management here. It's something that is heavily encouraged to come here and experience an engineered lifetime. And often they will, if you do it and you have certain skills and you've been proven to do a good job, they'll put you in positions where you can influence society, so you can actually help shape human history, or whatever history of whatever planet is in a planetary consciousness simulation is being utilized to stage engineered lifetimes.
So this is so interesting. This is so interesting. So I was thinking, well, are there really no bad ETs? Are they just trying to get what they want in this planetary consciousness simulation? Are they trying to bend the will? Because is the Creator more benevolent, more malevolent? It just exists and it experiences itself. So there's no real negative action from it. So if there are negative ETs or good ETs, they can both influence the planetary consciousness simulation for however they want and use bodies however they want, right? Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. The whole problem, we're sort of getting a little bit off track, so I have to get back to the original stuff in just a minute. But yeah, this is difficult to explain. I would, what you need to know is a lot of people see this from a position of positive and negative extraterrestrials. that has been seeded into the religion. So it's easy for us to see it that way because we're conditioned to see it that way. The problem with the information that I've got is it contradicts that. It really tells people that on the ET level of understanding of all of this, it's a LARP. It's a live action role playing game. We're in the LARP, but we're dying and we're suffering and we're living it. And on the other timeline, these different ET groups are at war with each other. So they're utilizing this other timeline to reinforce this notion that they're enemies and we're caught in a proxy war. We're the pawns in a war between different ETs, and that's the ongoing storyline. You go above that, you'll figure out that this is a LARP and that there's rules of engagement. There's certain things that just don't happen. That's something for maybe a different subject. It kind of gets into spiritual warfare and psychic attacks and so forth, and the way this whole thing is structured.
Well,
So
we were
it's a
going to
LARP.
talk about that too, but I know you want to talk about
Yeah,
some of the
yeah.
SSP. Whatever you want to talk about, it's on you. You know, it's up to you.
Okay, so let's get back to these lifetimes being stacked on each other. Yeah, I was put through 30 Egyptian lifetimes. A lot of those were running simultaneously with each other. I'm only aware, I don't have any cognitive memories of them. There's things that I was told. Elizabeth April did a reading on me, and that was an interesting story. I think I talked about that last time with you, or maybe I didn't.
Yeah.
But actually, getting back to the SSP stuff, let me get another prop out here. I got this prop that I stole from my dog. This to represent the Earth, and he's not too happy about it. Okay, so let's just put it over here. We'll do it over this side. This is good. This would be the planet, and what I want people to understand is this is Earth. This is a planetary social engineering program that's running on this planet right now. It involves the experiencers socially engineering the population after they wake up and become activated. So that's what's taking place. That's what this Great Awakening is all about. Now over here, my fingers, you can imagine, I wish I had a prop where I could put little stars or sparkly things on my fingers, but all this shit over here, excuse my language, is actually the SSP on an alternative timeline. So this is the off-planet version of a social engineering program right over here. So what's taking place is you have people on Earth, for example, that are going to be socially engineered by the experiencers to understand that we live in a transdimensional reality and we have neighbors in outer space and other planes of existence, and that everything is simply consciousness. Of course, we're also here to stabilize the planet, to make things better, and show people how to actually treat one another. This is going to take a long time, hundreds of years for this program to run itself out, but it doesn't involve anything off planet. So you have to educate the public, not just about extraterrestrials, but you have to have members of the public that actually have contact with extraterrestrials, not just on planet like you would as a starseed or an abductee, like you would if you were out in outer space working with them in the secret space program. So how do you do this? Well, you create a timeline consciousness simulation, and then you take these people from Earth. And by the way, what you need to know, all of these people that are in this SSP, the ones are from Germany, the ones who are actually children, because this has been going on for more than one, probably 2 generations, maybe 3. They're having children out there on these secret space program outposts that are out there. So I'll use my fingers over here for that. So every one of those people that are in this program are fragments. They're avatars, just like we are as starseeds, just like actually, in fact, everybody that's here, every human soul as well is an avatar of their self, because our consciousness is being manipulated and it's being suppressed. We have a higher self, and whenever you have a higher self and a lower self or an avatar self, you have a split consciousness. So anyway, how do you take all of the people on Earth and acclimate them over here to what's going on with the off-planet secret space program stuff? But what you do is you split their souls. You take those fragments, you put them into this SSP, you put them on an alternative timeline that you can control, and you socially engineer them through their experiences. Then you begin to bring them back. You take those fragments, you combine them back with the higher selves over here on the planet, and then you begin to wake them up. And you do it systematically. You do it as a trickle. So first thing that happens is we start hearing about these long-term abductions. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is that, and this is what has affected me, since 2008, I tried to go public with my story, and I got nowhere. No one would talk to me except for you. And that's because during the time that I had contacted you, the subconscious manipulation surrounding me that was preventing people from wanting to talk to me was lifted. So I got you to respond. That's something I've learned because they've taken me through my life and shown me where things were done to sabotage myself, things that I was trying to do, and also, to manipulate things so that no one would give me the time of day to talk to me because they didn't want me talking. Anyway, getting back to what I was talking about is that if you are a secret space program abductee and you go to a UFO researcher, I mean, I've got some, I'd say, low-grade circumstantial evidence, and I have some other evidence with Rex Bear and his experience with me when he opened my email. So I have something to substantiate myself with. I can point out that there's a cult out there run by ETs. I can show people where it is. I can show how the system of magic works and how it's really just a facade wrapped around what starseeds go through. It's just a program. So I can substantiate it, but nobody would want to talk to me about it. But if you're a 20 and back secret space program participant, you have no evidence at all, and you sound like you're a paranoid schizophrenic because you've got this elaborate story that's coming through and you have no evidence, and it sounds so far-fetched. But what happened to those people? The researchers took them seriously, and that's because of subconscious psychic programming and subconscious psychic networking. They network us together, and we become the disclosure for the people of the planet. So that's what's going on there. Now, getting back to what I was saying, once you take these fragments of the SSP members and you combine them with their higher selves, and then you induce memory recall, you create a gradual trickle of Tony Rodriguez's all over the place and Randy Kramer's. And I apologize, I don't know the names of the other people involved in this who have come forward, but this is a slow trickle that's beginning to accelerate. And if you've seen it, if you paid attention, which I know you have in the last few years, it started out with one or two people, and then it was just an explosion of people coming forward saying, this has happened to me. That's exactly what they're doing. It's educating the population, and first it's going to be used to wake up the star seeds. Once the star seeds begin to absorb all this information, then they become social influencers and social implants. And then we start socially engineering the population. Now, how do you get the people on Earth to be acclimated to space and to what's out there? Well, once you bring those fragments back and you merge their consciousness, these people will start coming forward, and for hundreds of years to come, they're going to have spontaneous memory recall. So by the time the planetary consciousness simulation is lifted and the star seeds are pulled off of Earth and we don't come back here anymore, the people that are native to this planet who have also participated in this SSP program are going to be well adept in handling the rigors of space and interacting with other species and civilizations and different cultures that are vastly different to what we're used to, because we can't even get along with the people that look just like us who have different skin colors. We're not ready yet. And that's what the secrecy is about. Also, the secrecy is about to prevent the governments of the world from controlling the narrative.
Yeah. Well, I think
kind of a mixed bag.
I think, but the problem with humanity is if you look at humanity, I think humanity is more benevolent than we think. I don't think it's us that have problems with other people with other races and stuff. I think that's the psyops and the government influence that make people that way. And that you're smart. I mean, it's the psyops that are put on people and the psychological operations that are put on the populace that make people turn on each other. You know what I mean? Because they know if we're divided, we have less power. But if we come together, we have all the power in the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They're exacerbating the racism that's still residual from older generations. They're trying to keep it alive and create reverse racism so that we keep fighting amongst ourselves and we never have any unity. It's a way of keeping everyone at a low vibrational frequency. And that's the goal of these elites. It's to divide and after they divide us, then they conquer us. They're doing a hell of a job of it right now. Yeah. And they're doing it at various levels of consciousness. The psychic attacks and all these other things that are taking place are part of the program, part of their effort to shut everything that's going on down, because they know there's a great awakening. They know we're being activated, and they're afraid of it because they know that there's also what you would call sleeper cells of star seeds that are going to be used for offensive, I would say, military operations. And this is something that you don't hear much about. And it's something that when you start talking about it, they start targeting you. And it isn't just, and it's actually military as well. I have a starseed friend who has experienced psychic attacks, not just by reptilians, but by military personnel. I wouldn't call these super soldiers anymore. I would call them just psychically adept military personnel that are working with these ETs and programs. So when he reported some of these attacks, and these aren't just your typical run-of-the-mill attacks, I would say Elizabeth April gets the softball attacks, which she talks about, and a lot of other starseeds. When you get up into this level and they see you as a threat, they will kill you. And this person that I've talked to has had more than one near-death experience. His significant other has been seriously injured with immune system problems. His immune system's been attacked, and his mentor has also had pretty severe attacks.
And someone that we know of that I look up to very highly, Gerald Clark, we think that something might have happened to him too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Gerald Clark contracted cancer. There's people out there that believe that he was given the cancer. And I don't know what the origin of this information is. I need to speak to this person again, because after we had agreed to do a website together, he dropped off the face of the earth about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I haven't heard anything. He's not responding to me. I think he's been attacked. I don't know the full details. It may have been an illness. I'm not sure, but it's very suspicious.
Is there any ways we can fight these attacks? I know keeping your body healthy and taking nutritional supplements, that always helps. But I was thinking this, and keep that in mind, that question, can we fight off these psychic attacks? But I was also thinking that there's entities that attack our brains too. I was looking at possession cases and abduction cases. And, I've had Nathaniel Gillis on my show, and there's these entities. I feel like this is people who get messages in their head, that you hear that throughout time. These are entities. This is just another way that they attack people's brains. And I think what they said on the Alex Jones show the other day, they said once people realize that these are entities that are talking to them, that the voices stabilize and they can overcome them. And I think that's huge. I think we need to tell people that, because I think there's a lot of people that think they're suffering from what they might think is mental illness, but it's really entities or psychic attacks or maybe black magic. Or what do you think?
It's all the above. I'm going to be doing a video about this soon. I did a little bit. My last podcast with the amazing, my amazing podcast partner was the last time I talked about it. Okay, I want to go back to real quick to this friend and explain what he went through. There were 2 reptilians, and I believe he said they were wearing purple robes with hoods. There was the short type. I think they're called the Throob. I'm not sure. Because they're from the Draco constellation. The Dracos are one of the races that helped to create humanity. They're one of the 9. But like I said, this is a LARP at the very top. They're the ones that have essentially volunteer to be the bad guys because they look so much different from us, and they're more frightening. So they would get that role. What they're doing is they're working in a program with super soldiers or psychic soldiers, and they're programming their etheric implants to make them to where they have psychic abilities, and then they're chaperoning them during these attacks. So my friend was attacked by a tall reptilian and a short reptilian, along with 2 military personnel that had crew cuts and military insignias. I believe it was U.S. military. They were in full uniform when they did this attack, and it happened more than once. Now, as far as defending yourself against this, you're pretty much defenseless and at their mercy to some degree. They also use satellites to attack people, and you've heard of targeted individuals where they have mobile units, mobile technology, and satellite technology where they can hit you with directed energy weapons. These friends of mine,
V2K, right? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I had to say that V2K's voice to skull technology. They used it in Iraq.
Oh, yeah. Right. And I think that has to do with the soul signature, your energy signature, which is like a psychic or spiritual or energetic fingerprint, how they can target you. It's the only thing that makes sense to me. I haven't been able to get much info on that. But anyway, you can get attacked by that. Now, what he's done, there's ways to reprogram the etheric implant, because we all have an implant. It's more or less like marking an animal and putting them into a fenced off ranch. For example, if you think of the planet as a like a spiritual prison or an augmented reality we're trapped into, the etheric implant allows the extraterrestrials to suppress our consciousness, alter our personality for the engineered lifetime experience. And it also allows them to suppress our psychic abilities and turn them on selectively to varying levels and to give us various psychic skills. So what this person does, this friend of mine and some friends of his that where he learned this from, is that they can talk to you in a conversation just like we're having. And I did some sessions with him where he was reprogramming my etheric implant, and he was removing certain things so that I could remember my past lives a little bit easier, as well as the emotional memory recall. Unfortunately, after he got done with that, I got blocked again because I'm under attack myself. And this was also supposed to help me with my life and with my illness and so forth. So it isn't fair to me. But to answer your question, there's ways to circumvent the satellite attacks and the targeted energy weapon systems that they use. There's also ways to easily overthrow and overwhelm these super soldier types as well as these reptilians, because there's, like I said, there's rules of engagement. If there wasn't rules of engagement in this simulated reality that we're in, they would literally just eat us alive. And I was also told that there are droves of star seeds coming here. Are you okay over there, Robert? Looks like you locked up.
I'm here. Okay.
All right, there are droves of star seeds coming to this planet who have volunteered for a death mission or a suicide mission, that when you get here, you're going to be attacked. This is all part of this war, the spiritual warfare that we're going through. It's a war. It's a staged war by the extraterrestrials. It's to get us to save ourselves. So everything that's going on, including the war in Ukraine, everything is being manipulated. World affairs have been manipulated since the beginning at a subconscious level. They've also injected their self and walked among us as gods and portrayed their self as such to suppress and socially engineer us. More or less what they're doing is just preventing us from developing technology, and also by developing social sophistication to where we can function without their ongoing manipulation. But the biggest problem is when you put people in a planetary consciousness simulation and you suppress their five senses. Well, actually, you suppress their psychic senses down to five senses. What you're really doing is inviting disaster, because if left to their own devices, they will destroy themselves, because with secrecy, you get corruption, and you cannot police your government. And the people in it can't police it very well either, because they can easily compartmentalize information and make good people do bad things and make bad people do horrendous things.
And with the ET civilizations, there's no secrecy because everybody can read each other's mind telepathically, right?
Unless they put people in a consciousness simulation like we're in. So there's probably civilizations out there that are authoritarian that suppress their people's consciousness. It absolutely has to be, because the technology exists. And just to give you an idea of how bad things have gotten with our government, during the stage 9/11 terrorist attack, which was a NATO operation to help perpetuate all the events that have taken place afterward, the Farsight Institute remote viewed the 9/11 attacks. They've got a two-part documentary on Farsight Prime that you can watch, and I'm not sure what part it is, but it's the segment where they talk about how the attacks were carried out. They remote viewed a command center, like a trailer type structure, and they weren't able to remote view inside of it. They couldn't get inside of it because it was surrounded by a localized consciousness simulation, the same technology that they use to suppress our consciousness planet-wide, as well as in the secret space program. And for those wondering what the planetary consciousness simulation actually is, it's a frequency generator that's in the atmosphere of Saturn. It's shaped like a cube. The rings are artificial. If you read the ring makers of Saturn, you'll see there's tubular drones. They comb the rings and produce the material. It's rock and ice and other types of stuff floating around, but you can see it's perfectly concentric rings. The North Pole storm, which has 6 sides, that's continuously just slowly rotating and completely symmetrical, is based in frequency. The frequency that this is generating alters the atmosphere, just like, Have you seen how they take like magnetic particles or small particles and they put them on a plate and they put sonic resonance to it and it creates geometric patterns?
No,
Have
I
you
never
seen
saw
that
that.
type of thing? We'll look into that. I don't know what it's called, but it's something to do with frequency and sound, and you can do it, I think, with magnetic iron with iron filings and just particles, and they can apply sonic energy to it or maybe magnetic frequencies, and it creates these incredible geometric type shapes. That's what's happening in the atmosphere. That frequency generator is creating that hexagon-shaped storm. If you look at the orientation of that hexagon-shaped storm to the relation of the rings, it looks like a satellite broadcasting station, and it's aimed right at us. It actually creates enough of a signal to envelope the entire solar system. So if they wanted to do this with other worlds such as Mars, which by the way was a very ancient planetary consciousness simulation, which is why it has pyramids and other temple structures.
That's
There
pretty
was
amazing.
there was a human-like civilization on Mars where they staged all of this just like they did here, and they used the same religions. That's why there's pyramids. That's why there's statues that are in ruins where you can look and you can see that they look Mayan, they look Egyptian. There's also in Japan, you have the keyhole mound. I'm sure you've seen that on Ancient Aliens and other shows. Well, you
Yeah.
can find that on Mars on the JPL images. That's because they use the same religions on Mars that they've used for us. It's here, it's there. Every system, every planet in a system, and the reptilians use this too, but I guess they would probably have different religions because they're completely different civil. Well, they're actually like a different collective. These ET civilizations like the Galactic Federation, the Zetas, they're an assisting race, and you have the Reptilian Empire. They consider themselves collectives of souls. It's more than just the government. That's how they refer to me as a member of their collective. And this is something that I felt a kinship with them at an intuitive level when my open contact started. I knew intuitively that I was part of them, and they slowly broke that story to me, and then I began remembering things. And I had some memories prior to the open contact.
So
Anyway,
you're a
getting off
reptilian.
course.
You're in with the reptilians. You're saying
No, no, not at all. No, not at all. Actually, I'm a member of the Galactic Federation. My soul originated in Orion, and I've lived in multiple different places all over the place. In fact, where I'm at now is a planet called Athoria. And Athoria is a very, very green, lush planet. Prior to that, I was on Iraseti, which is a very dry planet, and that's in Orion. That's where the Hajayan people came from. They actually, from what I was told, they originated in the solar system prior to the current arrangement. So when you see the asteroid belt out there and you see all these cores of planets that they keep talking about, NASA, because NASA wants to mine this planetary core. They won't admit that's a core of a planet, but it's this incredibly valuable asteroid that I've read articles about. Those are cores of planets that have been left over from prior solar system-wide terraforming operations.
wow.
So we've just been using. We're actually the last in like 9 cycles that have used this star. So this solar system has a very ancient history, and that's something that I'll probably be writing about in the future. But that's how this works, and that's what's really going on. So anyway, go ahead and shoot me off a question.
Yeah, let's see if we had we had other topics we were going to talk about. I'm bringing it up right now. I'm not seeing if we covered everything. My email closed that I had from you. Let me see here. I know we talked about the SSP. We talked about
Okay.
Psychic
Would
attacks.
you like to talk about engineered lifetimes? Well, how about engineered lifetimes?
That sounds good. Yeah, let's hit that up.
Okay, engineered lifetimes. The main purpose of this planet and the arrangement that we're in is that there's a fledgling race project, which we know is humanity. It's 2/3 of the human population. You have 1/3 of the human population are star seeds. A portion of those star seeds are becoming active, and they're waking up. They're becoming activated, and they're given something to do. And their main purposes is to influence society in a variety of ways, not just to do tarot card readings and play with crystals and pretend that they have something special about them, because that gets into the ego issue. But really, we're actually here to just be a part of the civilization and actually do things to make it a better place, because we owe these people who we've been using like a parasite to a host to stage these engineered lifetimes. We owe it to them to get them out of the system. They shouldn't be in it. And they've been in a perpetual reincarnation cycle for almost 2 million years. So anyway, engineered lifetimes, what they generally are is when you're in any extraterrestrial civilization. Some of the ET civilizations don't age. They all don't. Every one of them that I've seen either ages very slowly or they don't age at all and they wear their body out. And when their body's worn out, they replace it with a clone body. They migrate their consciousness from the old body that's worn out to the clone body, or they go through a complete life cycle, which isn't like ours. It's much, much longer, and the aging process is slowed. So, and then they essentially become, they go through the normal cycle like an animal would. They reincarnate, but they reincarnate back into their family unit. So in other words, children could be the parents and parents could be the children. It's sort of, they just reverse roles in an endless type of system, and or like an endless cycle. So that's how, that's done. But when you become mentally ill and over a course of time and therapy doesn't work, it's time to come for an engineered lifetime experience. And that's when they do the fracturing of the consciousness. So I don't want to get into the soul transference stuff that I had remembered. You can find it on my website. I talked about a little bit in, I think, one of our last interviews. We're just going to get down to the fracturing part of it. There's a couple of different lifetimes. I just want to make sure I get this straight so I don't miss anything. Okay, we have the one that we're talking about with the SSP, and this is where you can actually stay in your ET civilization. You can continue to do your work, you continue to live your life, and you're completely unaware that this fragment of yourself is actually, well, the fragment is there. You know that it's someplace living an engineered lifetime. It's a carbon copy of you. But you have, the way this is that if you're in the ET culture and you're living over here, let's just use this. This is, over here is the higher self. This is the full person in an extraterrestrial civilization. They need an engineered lifetime experience. So it can be done in a timeline consciousness simulation, just like with the SSP, or they can put you on Earth in the same timeline that you're in. They fracture your soul, and then they do something called personality rearrangement. If what they do is they select the qualities that you need to exhibit in your engineered lifetime. So if you have a personality disorder, that's going to be the prominent personality feature that you have, and they'll add other things in there. They're going to take out the parts that are you, that represent your emotional memories and your cognitive memories of your entire soul makeup. So everything that you've been through stays with your higher self. The rest of it goes over here under a state of amnesia, but you still have those characteristics. In other words, children can be raised in a controlled environment. You could have several kids in a controlled environment. They're all going to turn out differently. They're all going to have their individual personalities, the things that they like to do, their favorite foods. Everything's going to already be there. The only thing that you're seeing is that they're aging and they're maturing, and then they're exhibiting these new personality traits. And parents have to struggle with this because this is the person who's lived before. And through personality rearrangement, they have the avatar has a version of the original self, but it's not complete. It's everything that they need you to be and everything that they need you to work on and get rid of in regard to your mental illness or your mental health issues or your personality disorders. So that's personality rearrangement. That is done for therapeutic purposes and to protect your consciousness. Because if you came here fully aware, it would be a state of hell. You'd commit suicide. You wouldn't want to do it. So you have to come here like everybody else and not remember a thing. And on top of it, through cyclic cataclysmic activity or engineered cataclysms, they can reboot the planet and erase our collective history. So at a collective level, we have no memory of self, and individually, we have no memory of self. Therefore, and that was done on Mars too. And that's why Mars is a beaten up planet. It's also experienced a lot of warfare after the planetary consciousness simulation program was terminated and it became a base of operations.
Can I just say something? What you basically done is I know this is a lot from you learned from your contact experiences, but I mean, this is the best I've ever heard anybody explain, all these different, because I've heard a lot of these different scenarios on different podcasts, but I've never heard somebody bring it together so thoroughly like this. This is really thorough and amazing. And I just want to thank you. It's great. It really is. Like I am so enthralled right now. Like, it's amazing. Like, and it's really like clicking, like everything you're saying is making sense, like as to why we're here and what we're doing, you know? So thank you.
You're welcome. Actually, it was interesting. Before I did this interview, I had some anxiety going on because I've been sick and was worried about all these different side effects and things that I've been going through that I can't control, like diarrhea, stomach issues, brain fog, And my higher self actually came through, which was surprising. And my higher self's female. Her name's Yaya said, or she goes by Yaya as short. That's the short abbreviation of it. And she said, I'm here. I'm going to be merging with you a bit. I'm going to be stepping in. You're not going to notice much, but this interview is going to go really well. You're not going to sound scatterbrained and long-winded like before. And I think that's actually taking place. So I was a bit nervous because once I heard that, I'm like, oh, can I depend on myself or what's going to happen? So I guess thanks to her, things are a little bit easier today and I can really get this information out in a much better way.
Do you think they were making you scatterbrained, like the negative ETs or whoever was trying to block this information from coming through? Someone might have been.
Absolutely. Now, we just talked about one type of engineered lifetime, so we're going to put that on shelf for a moment. I'll get into why I've been going through all of these problems. I'll try to keep this as short as possible without going overboard with it because it is complicated. Going into this lifetime, I had the soul transference memory, and I remember just arriving at the facility and giving them a hard time because I said I never had to do this. I never had to go into an engineered lifetime with a speech impairment and other handicaps. And and I didn't know what this was and why they were doing it to me. So it's taken 48 years to figure this out. What they did with me is because I've proven to be very resilient and so that I can handle a lot of trauma in these lifetimes that I've had. I've been killed repetitively in suicide missions in Egypt. I mean, in Egypt, for example, I asked my higher self, I said, since I don't have any memories of Egypt yet, what is it like? And she said, really simple. She said, Egypt was harsh living, very, very, very difficult. And if you didn't do what you're told, they killed you. And apparently I didn't do what I was told quite a bit because I was being used as an agent of change to challenge the social order. So when you get into that type of situation, you get killed a lot. And that's why I have 30 lifetimes. They were probably pretty, I wouldn't, Egypt really, that whole civilization there goes back about 100,000 years. And there's ruins that go back that far that they haven't found yet.
Seffer did good videos on him. Do you ever watch Robert Seffer? He's an anthropologist. Dude, he looked at the pharaohs. All the pharaohs had red hair. He said they were like more like a Aryan or Indo-European. And when I say Aryan, I don't mean like a racist. I mean that civilization that went there, the same Aryans that went into Persia, the same Aryans that went into Iran. Those are the Indo-Europeans that went into Egypt. And he said mostly Egypt was not sub-Saharan African, but it was a Mediterranean culture. He said more of a Macedonian type heritage. This is just what I heard. I don't know if it's, but it was very interesting. I don't know. He backs it up too. He has some really interesting stuff, but I know that's another conversation. I'm a history nerd too. Like I love following history,
Yeah, I've heard a theory about the Chinese pyramids, and one of the reasons why they supposedly cover them up with trees and soil was because some of these gods are actually they're actually Caucasian. And I don't know where this researcher, I don't even remember who it was. It was a YouTube video I saw. And it looked like one that was from the 80s or 90s, I think. And that's what this person was alleging. I don't know. But yeah, the Egyptian culture has probably changed a bit. I mean, there's been people coming and going. I know that what they did with the Egyptians, and we call them Egyptians, but that's not what they were called. Those names have changed throughout the last 100,000 years because the northern portion of Africa, if you go all the way from Egypt all the way across the eye of the Sahara, what they call it, the Rorschach or the Rorsch something type of structure.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people think it's Atlantis. There was pyramids and basically ancient civilizations being lorded over by extraterrestrial gods during that time, and they destroyed it and built it back up and destroyed it again. The reason for that and was simply to suppress human development and to just drag it out so that because they have to suppress us. If they give us a lot of time, we'll build things. If I dropped you off in a wilderness and said, hey, I want you to build a cell phone and give me a call and I'll pick you up. I mean, technically you couldn't do that, but if you put a civilization of people on say like a raw planet with just forest and land, eventually they're going to come up with a cell phone. You give them enough time, and they'll eventually get to the point where they can challenge the extraterrestrials because they can detect them with technology. So to prevent
that's where we're at now, right? Where we can detect I mean, but I mean, do you think we're complicit with them in our SSP? Like we're working with them, and they know about that they're in the planetary consciousness simulation, the government, or
I think that they suspect it, and I think that's part of the reason why I've gotten a lot of negative attention from the government. As far as the NSA and harassment on my telephone and stuff. I think that they're aware of it to a certain degree, but I think that they're so caught up in these treaties and in this interaction with positive, negative, and neutral ETs that it wouldn't matter what they think is going on. They've got to deal with face-to-face interactions, and I think they kind of dictate the reality, and they dictate the terms to the governments and so forth, and who's ever representing this. It seems like it's the elite banking cartel are running this clandestine operation and keeping it secret from us.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway, let me see here. Do you want to get back to engineered lifetimes and actually cover the rest of them?
Yeah.
Okay. I may as well just get into what they're doing with me. There's several ways to do this. We talked about the way to do it where you split the consciousness, where the extraterrestrial person stays in their civilization and they just continue their life and then have to go into a facility where they have to recall this. So it's essentially a version of what's going on with the SSP, except it's an entire lifetime versus 20 years. And by the way, if somebody gets killed in an SSP operation, say, for example, when Tony Rodriguez was in that situation where they put him in like an arena with a giant bug, and they had a couple of people that were there with him, that were in the program with him, and they had to fight against this thing, and I think one of them was killed, or maybe two. When you die in the secret space program on this alternative timeline that they've created, your mission ends and you wake up in your bed just like nothing happened. So, in other words, if Tony was killed, let's say within 5 years, he wouldn't have 20 years of memories. He'd have 5 years of memories to recall up to his death. So it doesn't harm the person physically, but it can definitely damage their consciousness. And as far as their emotional and mental state.
Not just that, but we get bruises. I mean, is that true that you can get bruises and stuff that they can leak through into this body? And
I don't know so much about that, but I think some of that, you were talking about a succubus attack.
Yeah, that's what she told me.
The Starseed person that I was going to do my website with, and hopefully I hear from him soon, him and his girlfriend get attacked. And he sent me a picture of scratches, but I couldn't open it. It was through Zoom, and for some reason when he sent me the picture, it just didn't work. Just like we're having problems now because we got friends watching. They're not really friends. They're actually they don't like what we're doing. But he experiences scratches. So does the girlfriend. The scratches come from the inside out. They bleed from it. Actually, I didn't get a chance to see it, but they do look like the type of scratches and hauntings. That much I know. It's exactly the same. They're attacking the energy body. The Nightmare on Elm Street concept is somewhat true, is actually completely true in a sense that they can kill you by attacking your energy body and manifest physical injuries. I've been attacked myself and I've had it happen. I've never had scratches, but I've had severe pain and I've had swelling and other things. And so they can manifest scratches and injuries. So energetic attacks like that can manifest physically. As far as it bleeding over from another lifetime, I don't think that that's possible, but I'm not an expert. I'm still learning this stuff.
Yeah.
And the stuff that I've talked about, the SSP, actually came to me in the last couple of weeks. My new contact who's Hot Jay, and his name's Orban, really great guy. I was smoking some meat And he likes to taste things through me because he likes to cook. And Ashtari was the same way. I used to cook things and we would share stuff and I would eat it and he would give me, advice on what I needed. That maybe it needs some more garlic or too much salt or whatever. But I was wrapping smoked meat. So when I got this information, it came in these packages and I could see them in my mind's eye. They were kind of floating across and he had them wrapped in the same paper I was wrapping the meat in. So it was neat because when I opened them up, I could sense what they were, but when I opened them up, I could get the full concept.
That's
So
cool.
it's just, because we're dealing with consciousness. So, I mean, you can get really creative if you want. If you're in a telepathic society and you wanted to send a love letter or just a gift, you could make a gift and you could make a gift that looks like a present, send it to someone through the medium of consciousness. And they would get this package and open it up and it would be full of love energy, for example. I mean, you could do stuff like that. It's just, we share a common imagination or a common subconscious or a collective subconscious, the best way to put it. So we have a collective shared imagination. The consciousness simulation severs us from that and makes us feel like we're individuals. So we have to communicate to the five senses instead of being really one consciousness shining as many. That's what makes this all possible. So let me go back here. There's a couple of different ways to do this. Let's see. Yeah, I've talked about a little bit of etheric implants, memory blocks, personality rearrangement. I'm just going to talk about different types of the other two engineered lifetimes I'm aware of. You have the one where you have an active higher self. Now, here's one other thing too. They can stage an engineered lifetime where you have like the one we've talked about. The other one that I'm in, they take the soul out of the body, they put the body in storage, or they cremate the body if the body's worn out, and you would get a new one upon returning. They would clone a body for you, or you would be reborn as a child in the culture that you belong in inside your family. So they would arrange it that way. Either way, you get a body back. But when you're in this controlled state of consciousness, your higher self, which is your normal extraterrestrial consciousness, your personality, is put to sleep. And I asked my higher self, I said, what is it like to be put to sleep like that? And she said, it's just like when they put you under anesthesia for a surgery. You just black out. There's no sense of time, no sense of self, no nothing. And she said, and it's actually comforting because you don't want to be involved. You don't want to be going through this engineered lifetime, and you don't want to have full recall of it. So you really want to be protected from it because it could involve trauma, whatever it involves. The fragment of you needs to go through it unhindered, and unless you want to wind up like me, which isn't fun at all. So anyway, you have that type of engineered lifetime where the higher self is put to sleep and then periodically awaken to kind of review things and make decisions. They may ask that person that they may ask your higher self, maybe you want to do this or that in regard to your experience. Do you want to do it? Everything is consensual. And then the avatar self experiences the engineered lifetime. So you have that one. Then you have another way, and then there's that one. Let me see what let's make sure, because I've covered a lot of information. Eventually I burned myself out.
I mean, we can always do a part two, because we covered a lot, whatever you think.
We have covered a lot. How about we just get into my situation a little bit more, so that because that'll give people an understanding of why I'm so screwed up. When I started this project, okay, let's just rewind a bit. I want to go back to when I was first put here. Prior to me coming here, prior to this engineered lifetime beginning, what was done to me is I was chosen for a position, and I just found this out. This has been something that's been given to me over about a year's time. So they've kind of gradually informed me of it. The way that this system is managed, and I'm just talking about the star seeds in general and the planetary social engineering program. And this is star seeds and has to do with the SSP, and it has to do with this. There's a hierarchy, and it starts out with spirit guides. So you'll have a spirit guides assigned to you. Then above them, you have life engineers. There's 3 life engineers are in a council together. Life engineers may be in charge of one person if it's a special circumstance, where they could be in charge of several hundred or several thousand star seeds in a program. Above them, you have councils of three. These are supervising councils. Every group of three life engineers will have a group of three supervising council members who may actually be in charge of multiple, multiple life engineers. And then it just goes up. You have another tier above that. It's a total of 84 tiers. At the very top, you have a council of 9 that supervise the entire program. And they don't make decisions for the people below, but they don't make decisions in regard to what's being done here with us on Earth. They make decisions in regard to keeping the system running. So their job is to remove people who are unfit. And when you're dealing with people in engineered lifetimes, such as a spirit guide or a life engineer, you will eventually become mentally sick from the stress and from dealing with the trauma that these people go through. It's a hard job and it's difficult and it takes a special kind of person. It's the type of job where you work from home and everything that you do is telepathic. So you can imagine you've got people living at home. They're scattered all about from here to Andromeda, if not further out than that, and they're all volunteers. But they're part of a government system and part of a government program that manages star seeds and engineered lifetimes and planetary consciousness simulations. So we know from allowing everyone to work at home after the COVID pandemic started, when people work from their home, they tend to be less motivated and they tend to try to look for ways to do less work because they're home. They don't have anybody breathing down their neck. And in this system, there's no AI supervision. So it's the buddy system, essentially, and it becomes the good old boys network eventually when it becomes corrupt. So we're going into this great awakening process, and there's a lot of social experiments taking place within the Galactic Federation's hierarchy that manages starseeds. And this is to make sure that the people working with the starseeds are capable of doing it to the best of their abilities. And these people have been working with starseeds for a very long time, like in Egypt and so forth in the ancient world, where things were quite a bit different. There wasn't a great awakening. And there wasn't a need to socially engineer the population to get them out of a planetary consciousness simulation or augmented reality that they created. So we're trying to we're actually introducing humanity to the real universe and the real source consciousness reality. So they need to run experiments, social experiments. I was put in one. What they did was they took 3 life engineers that were psychopathic that needed to be removed from their positions. All 3 of these people had a vendetta against the system they worked in because they were put in engineered lifetimes for therapeutic purposes, and instead they got worse. I know this because I was put in an 18-hour telepathic loop. That's how I describe it, because I was locked. It's actually a 2-person or a group consciousness simulation. And that's where I was telepathically connected to this woman named Asib, who had ruined my life and literally systematically wrecked everything I tried to do. She was also the one preventing me from getting to researchers. She was making me sick, giving me all sorts of problems, and was giving me false information. She was forcing a loved one. Her name's Decebi. It's one of my spouses. In my ET life, she was forcing her to be abusive and to lie to me as part of the program. And, it's hard to understand how people could be manipulated like this, but this is how these programs work. And to get into it here would take too long. But what was done to me is that they put me in a situation. It was pretty much guaranteed to fail. There was about 3,000 of us that were in charge. They were under the supervision of these 3 life engineers. There was no supervising council above, just an observing council. And so what happened was they let this experiment kind of unfold. And as it unfolded, these 3 life engineers were sabotaging the lifetimes of everybody that they were in charge of. The purpose of the program was to create social implants, to be influential in society from the extraterrestrial point of view, which is what I'm doing right now. But the goal of the life engineers was to prevent everyone from actually reaching that point where they kind of graduated out of the program and were actually able to be utilized. I was the only one that got through the program. And the way the program ended, the way the abuse cycle ended, at least from the Yeah, well, the way the abuse cycle was designed to end is someone in the system had to file a grievance. Nobody did. When it got to the point where I was assigned a spirit guide named Heelbead, who was an Andromedan and was also needing to go into an engineer lifetime. He had a lot of personality issues, psychological issues. But he was a great person. I really miss him. But it wasn't until he worked with me and I put a lot of pressure on him and literally tore him a new rear end to get me help and get me out of the situation that he actually did it, because he was intimidated. He was also afraid of being punished for not doing something throughout the course of my lifetime. And I told him, I said, all of these other guides have done the same thing as you. They've done nothing to help the people they were in charge of in this experiment. You need to be the one that helps me, because if you help me, you shut this whole thing down and it stops. You should not be afraid of being punished. Anyway, he did that and that ended the social experiment. But when I got to the end of the social experiment, that was the end of my life. I was told that I could leave if I wanted to, and I was encouraged to. I said, look, I don't want to leave. I want to get some closure in my life. I want to try to fix things. And I don't want it to be a waste. I feel like my entire life has been just pissed away. And I said, please, can I continue to do my project? Can you help me do it? I know that I can, and if I don't succeed at it, fine. Well, unfortunately, they had other plans for me. And what they did was this is when I was with Ashtari. They brought Ashtari in after Heelbead was removed. Ashtari turned out to be a family member of mine. He didn't tell me in the beginning, but he slowly broke that to me. And then the emotions came out. But what he was told to do was not to aid me in doing a social media project, but just to kind of humor me in doing it. But his goal was to actually convince me that I needed to come home. I needed to leave and I needed to exit this lifetime and let them take me out, because it's based in free will. It's whether your higher self wants to go. And it's also, normally the higher self makes this decision, but because I was so aware of myself, it had to be a joint decision. So my higher self had to agree to leave, and so would I. And neither one of us were going to do that. So, so we went into this process where I made some videos. I was given some bad information. I had experienced a lot of problems. Promises weren't kept, and Ash was caught in the middle. And basically, what happened from that point on is that he tried to protect me, and it got to the point where he was removed for that. And during the process that I was with him, they used us to remove over 36 bad life engineers. And this was to prep me to be on this Council of 9, which was supposed to clean out this entire hierarchy and make it better so that it would be ready for the Great Awakening, so that we could actually do a better job with the star seeds and people wouldn't suffer. And that was the whole purpose of this. And so we removed about 36. The problem is that the people that in a higher council level who set this up, what they did is they didn't offer any protection after we removed these people. So I was at the mercy of the good old boys club. And then every life engineer that we got, every council member that was supervising them was here to sabotage me. And we're talking sabotage in the form of psychic attacks, where they were inducing pain. I had all sorts of problems. I tried to make videos. It was like this project was on again and off again, and it was just endless. So I'm still in that situation, but we're making some progress. To give you an idea of what they did with me consciousness-wise, and this goes beyond what I've talked about, the plan was when Ashtari was put into the situation, I was told that they were going to merge my consciousness with my higher self. So Yaya and me would actually be one being again, but there would be a controlled state of consciousness to where we weren't fully merged. It was kind of like this. If you consider this a merger right here at the back, and this part is still open, this would be the subconscious, components of her and I. This is the conscious portion of it. That stayed separate so that I could talk to her as a second person. And she could obviously talk to me as a second person. That's how they set it up. So she actually became another contact where I could talk to her and ask questions and get memories and information and concepts and so forth. Well, by doing this, they brought her into this reality where every memory and every experience that I've had throughout my entire lifetime became hers immediately. There was no removal. Well, actually, I'll explain how this works so you guys will understand how these engineered lifetimes work. I'm going to explain the death process of a starseed in just a moment. But just imagine you've now absorbed all of the memories from your avatar self, and now you've got all of that, but you're still split. So what they did was they put her in a controlled state of consciousness, and I asked her, I said, because I also mentioned before what it's like to be put to sleep. So that's when I asked her that. But I said, what is it like being in the state of consciousness that you're in? And she said to me, she goes, the only time that I see light, because I'm in a dark void, the only time that I see light is when I think of you, or I recall a memory and begin thinking of things. That's the only time. So you're in a void, and then when you think, you see an image in that void. It's like the dark of your mind, and you're seeing the image. And so she could focus in on me and experience what I was experiencing, or just remember what she had been through in her life and just think. And she said it's a horrible state to be in. And this was about a month into it. It took her about 4 or 5 weeks before a deep depression set in. And that's when we were beginning to realize that we were being sabotaged. And Ash finally told me, he said, I was brought into this under false pretenses to get you out. And he said, we merged. He said, I had no choice in this. I didn't want to do it, but they merged your consciousness, and I knew it was going to cause emotional damage to both you and your higher self. And, and he was caught in the middle of this. Well, once she told me all of this stuff, I began to feel the depression that she had. It also combined with my life experience here, because things aren't good. And, because this has turned my life upside down, it's ruined my life, and it's caused me to walk two realities at the same time and be torn and be pulled away from what's important, which is this lifetime. Instead, I'm being pulled into something that I can't do anything about, and no one understands it. You can't go to a therapist and talk about this stuff. They'll think you're crazy. There's really nobody to talk to, and except other contactees. And I'm so above, my experiences are so above and beyond a lot of them. There's only a small number out there. I've met some on Avalon, and that's like, for example, the person that I wanted to do this project with. I met him on Avalon because I was told to go on Avalon and just ask people for help and tell my story a little bit. And then I was contacted. So it was all an arranged thing. But I got really depressed. And at the end of that depression, it lasted 6 weeks. And it started right after I did my last podcast about psychic super soldiers, three plus almost 4 months ago. Once I got through the depression, what actually ended the depression is I gave in and I said, look, if this is all about getting me out of here, I've suffered enough, and I see that there's no way I'm going to move forward with this, because they're going to keep sabotaging the project. So I said, just take me the hell out of here. And I said, please, before you do, transition me out of here to where I can remember something about where I'm going. I can remember, I have something to comfort me with, because this is extremely difficult. I'm not supposed to remember this stuff. Well, unfortunately, for me, that resulted in stage 3 heart failure, because as soon as I agreed to that, within about a week or two, I started feeling sick, and I didn't realize it crept up on me. But within 6 weeks or less, I was really sick, to the point where I had to go seek medical intervention. And I realized before I was even tested, I was told, you've got stage 3 heart failure. And so then I've been dealing with all that right now. And that's what this whole thing was about. It was about essentially lying to this part of me when my higher self was aware of it, had agreed to it, was lying to me and telling me, hey, we're going to merge your consciousness with your higher self. It's going to help you do your project. You're going to actually be better after we do this than the way you are now. And you were asking me about being scatterbrained. Yeah, I had psychic attacks. My first video, I was given false information. They put me out there, and I did a scatterbrain video. It took, I don't know how long. I think it was 45 minutes of long-winded talking. And it was about the outcome of the presidential election, and it was false information, just like they'd given me false information about the duration of the war in Ukraine, which is why I no longer do, Galactic Federation updates, because you start making predictions you're opening yourself up to being the person that lied to everybody because you gave false information that you thought was true. And now you've given bad information out to an audience that you care about. And that's not, so I'm not doing that anymore. And anyway, that's what they did to me. And it's been a very difficult experience because when you go through an engineered lifetime and they have an engineered ending to it, they have a planned ending. Like say they're going to give Robert some debilitating disease or chronic condition in his 70s, and he's going to die when he's 80. Okay, that's how it's going to happen. But what if you tell Robert all about that? What if you tell Robert, we're going to make you sick? I mean, it's not something anybody should go through. And I was told that you're one of the few that we've done this to. And we apologize because, and I was through Orban. He personally apologized multiple times to me. He's cried over things that he's had to do. It's been very, very difficult for everybody that's had to work with me because this isn't the way it's supposed to be. I'm not supposed to know this stuff. And the reason I talk publicly about it, even though they don't want me to, some of them don't want me to, some of them do, is because I feel that I have an obligation to everybody that's going through these experiences so that I can tell them what is really going on behind the scenes and why it's happening to you. Because I've paid the price for it, so it shouldn't be in vain. I need to go out and tell people. That's why I'm thankful that you have me on today.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, so is there, I know this, I'm not very good at medical. Is there any way you can beat the heart failure?
No, because it's what I've been told is it's neurological. I had autonomic nervous system failure, and I'm starting to get symptoms of that now too. They put it into remission when I had agreed to do the project, which was all part of the social experiment because they were put me in a situation where I was dying and then told me, hey, if you take this project, we'll make you better, which they did. But they sabotaged me when I tried to do the actual project because it was never intended to be done. It was intended to be the end of the social experiment.
Wow.
And I was supposed to leave at the end of it. Now they're bringing it back, so I'm back where I was. I'm on the same medication at the same dosage level, and I need to go up from there. So no, this is the way this ends. This is the scripted ending to an engineered lifetime, and I've accepted that. It's not something you have a choice over. It's when you get sick and you become terminally ill, you have two choices. You can accept what's going on, or you can just refuse to accept it and cause a lot more problems for yourself. You're never going to get closure like that. So I've had to look at this from a different perspective. I don't fear death whatsoever. I know where I'm going. I've got memories of it now. I have an emotional connection with it. So it's much, much easier to deal with from that after I've gained that information and those experiences and memories. But at the same time, it's still very difficult to deal with because you really can't talk about it. I mean, there could be a massive fallout between my wife and I or other people in my family if they saw me doing this interview, because they wouldn't understand and they would think that I was taking my problem and turning it into something else. And I don't know how they would process that or what they would assume, but it wouldn't be positive. So I'm doing this, there's a price to pay for doing this. It isn't just harassment by the NSA. It isn't just spiritual attacks or psychic attacks. There's a real world fallout here. And I'm to the point where it doesn't matter. It's because I feel that this is what's needed. This is the correct moral way to go about this, which is to tell people.
That's why I wanted to have you on the show. I wanted you to come on and be able to tell your story and then maybe we can get it out to people and then and this also gives a big it's a big conglomerate of information as to what's really going on in the world. So I really appreciate that too. Right. Well, do you want to stop for today and then we can do maybe a part 2 in maybe a couple weeks or something?
Absolutely. If you got like 5 minutes, I'd like to talk about something. If we still have some time, if that's okay.
Yeah, I have another podcast at 9, but we have like 5 more minutes. Yeah, we can do 5 more minutes.
Okay, yeah, and then I want to talk to you briefly after that. Then I'll let you go. Yeah, I did a video recently about alien implants, missing time, and abduction scars. And a lot of the information, really everything I talk about, is framed within a planetary social engineering program. So I'm trying to get people to look at what's going on with the ET interaction that we're having, from a different perspective. Instead of looking at it from this proxy war between extraterrestrial races, I want people to look above that and see that it's actually a type of elaborate social engineering program. When it comes to abductions, for example, I did this video recently, just a couple of days ago. I talked about the physical implants and how they're different from the etheric implant. The etheric implant is really the implant that does all of the things that you think the physical implant does. The purpose of the physical implant is simply to be evidence for us to find and actually follow up on. One, because the implants don't have any real technological capabilities. There are some that can migrate through the flesh that we've seen. There are some that can be neutral to the immune system. We've seen stuff like that, but there hasn't been any really good research. It's all been suppressed. It's very obscure, and it's mainly limited to people that remove these implants and they wind up having a collection of them. The contact he doesn't take, then the doctor keeps them. And there was a doctor that passed away a few years ago that was doing this. I don't know if there's anybody.
Dr. Lear.
Dr. Lear. Okay, cool. So, yeah, the actual implants do not have any technological capabilities. They're not tracking devices. They're simply there to be found by us and to explore what's going on. So it's a type of disclosure. Now we get into second part of this is missing time. We've talked about timeline consciousness simulations. They can abduct you and take you and pull you into a timeline consciousness simulation. They can also pull you physically into a timeline consciousness simulation, not just taking a fragment of you, and they can return you in 0 time. This allows them to abduct people in the middle of daylight, in the middle of a crowd of people. It can be done like that. It can be done on the couch with your spouse in the middle of a TV show. You can be watching you can be watching a rerun of Married with Children.
I love that show.
Yeah, it's a cool show, but you could be abducted right off the couch, taken and given an anal probe and have a scoop of your skin taken out and put right back on the couch. And all you've got is a sore spot. They could do all that and they could do it to where you wouldn't be aware of it. The purpose of missing time is to give you something to explore. It's okay. I left my house. I saw a bright light. 2 hours went and I don't know where I was. And I've got amnesia and I've got some marks on my body. So I need to pursue this. This is being done for social engineering purposes. It's a type of residual form of evidence left over for people to investigate, and it's a form of disclosure. So
I get a question. Why would they do the anal probes then? Or is that just a form of like urban legend folklore?
Well, it happened to Whitney Strieber, and if you listen to any of his interviews, it was one of the worst things that could have ever gotten out because he became the anal probe guy and it became a tongue-in-cheek joke.
That's what I thought. Yeah, but like I believe him too. I'm not saying I don't believe him. It just seems like why would the ETs do this? Like, you know?
Well, there's a wide variety of things. There's a breeding program. And another thing too with hybrids, they could create hybrids on a different timeline and never even bother with us. So that's all being done too for social engineering purposes. They want us to have these experiences.
Yeah.
They want us to partake in this hybrid program. This is in civilizations out in the cosmos, when there's a need to rebuild somebody's genetics, the other races join in and help out. We're being acclimated to being part of this collective. And as part of this collective, it's our personal responsibility to one another to be available for genetic experiments, or not so much experiments, but for hybridization programs. You know, the Zetas, for example, have a lot of genetic problems because they're basically clones. So they're trying to create a body type that allows them to be able to reproduce. And then you've got other programs going on. And you've also got 2 hybrid programs that I'm familiar with, which I believe have been finished. And that was to create another world of consciousness simulation to put star seeds in after the Earth has been finished with and the human race is then set free. They need a place to put the overflow of star seeds that have been coming here to go through these therapeutic engineered lifetimes. So they needed a new set of container bodies, a new container body race to put on another terraformed planet.
That's pretty interesting.
So that's some of those reasons. And as far as why they do anal probes, I really couldn't tell you. I mean, there could be a variety of reasons. And I don't think it happens to a lot of people, or at least they don't recall it, but it did happen to Whitney Strieber. And it's become a running joke, unfortunately, for him. I mean, sometimes you have to take it on the chin when you get this information out. I mean, it could happen to me. They could call me the crazy guy who thinks he's in a consciousness simulation, you know. But anyway, abduction scars, same exact thing. They could take a skin sample from you and they could completely heal the scar over. So they could repair it on a cellular level. I was talking to the CB one night, and I just happened to ask her, I said, why is your face so perfect? There's no blemishes. And she said, well, we're genetically engineered. Our bodies are genetically engineered, so we can get rid of the acne and all the problems that you have. But, you know, you still get scars, and you still get marks on yourself. You may get freckles and different things. And she said, we have a simple handheld device that you can just put over your face, and it'll repair you at a cellular level in a matter of a few seconds, like a med bed in your hand. And there's no blemish at all. It's gone. So it's a matter of a handheld device. They could take an abductee, take a skin sample out, completely rebuild that skin at a cellular level, and send them back home with no scars. But they do that because they want you to find the scars, the marks, all of it, the evidence of the abduction, just like the missing time, just like the implants. They're doing it. Well, they've got other purposes for taking you, but one main purpose that's consistent is to create a type of disclosure, just like the Skinwalker Ranch. That's a living laboratory of ET phenomenon and paranormal phenomenon, and the two are now becoming associated with each other. ETs and spirit activity. They want to fuse the two together and expand their consciousness to recognize that they are responsible for all of it. They are the ones that can manifest all of these things, and we're in an augmented reality that they control, and they're playing God with us. That's the message of the Skinwalker Ranch. So just so you know, it's all being done for social engineering purposes as well as other reasons, but in general, it's under a blanket or an umbrella of a planetary and off-planet social engineering program.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm going to stop recording now. And do you want to tell everybody where they can find you? And then we can talk after. But I mean, like, do you want to tell everybody your website and where to find your stuff and all that stuff? And thank you, by the way.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Yeah, you know, you can find me on YouTube right now. That's the only primary place. I've got other channels that I'm closing up because, you know, the other social media video sharing sites just don't have any traffic for this type of material. And Rumble doesn't like anything UFO or starseed related. I get like maybe 1 or 2 views over a month there. So I'm staying on YouTube as long as they keep me and don't kick me off. So you can find me at Hajan Contactee at YouTube. The website is up in the air because I'm still waiting to hear back from this person, this other contactee. He wanted to change the name of the Voices of Orion project, which I was fine with, to represent something that was more inclusive, that involved everybody. So I had about 12 or 13 names or so that I'd sent him, but we're at a stage where something has happened to him and I have not heard back. So it's up in the air. And unless he gets back to me soon, I'm going to just run with it. But so I don't have the website up. If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see a link there, but it goes to a V-Bulletin link, or actually a page, because I was going to do a V-Bulletin forum and start a community. But because I'm sick, I'm not going to do that, which is why I need somebody to take this project over after I put all the information on the website, and then hopefully build a community of star seeds that can be utilized for specific programs, like I mentioned earlier.
That's amazing.
And that's, of course, that's the reason why there's a lot of attacks. They don't want us congregating together and actually being utilized by the ET presence, by the positive side of it.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, like if you look at Project Avalon's history, that actually is a virtual temple complex where it's a convergence point of star seeds and experiencers and light workers. And if you know anything about the history of that project and everything, it has been heavily manipulated by lots of government agents. It's been, the people involved have been psychically attacked, and it's just gotten to the point where it's not what it was and what it could be. Thankfully, it's still there, and it's really kind of a very good place to be, because it's a kind of a home base for a lot of us. But
That's
there
cool.
needs to be more of these. There needs to be a network of these. And that's what the overall plan was. And I was tapping into that for my higher self when I conceived this project, which was that we were going to create a grid network of light workers in communities that would be networked together. And we would be working under the authority and under the overall direction of the positive extraterrestrial side to make things, to improve the conditions here and
Yeah.
to do things that need to be done, that we're kind of at a level of spiritual psychic warfare, I guess you could say. I mean, because when you do this type of thing, they automatically engage you. The reptilians engage you, the psychic soldiers engage you, the whole system comes after you. So anyway, yeah, that's what I'd envisioned, and that's what's going to happen. And that's the next thing. And that's something that researchers are stubborn about. They don't want to talk about it. And the truth of the matter is, and I think the final word here, or the final thing to take away from this, is that, yes, extraterrestrials are using social media to socially engineer the human population. It's about time that we all recognize it. And people need to see that, because that's exactly what's happening. You're evidence of it. I'm evidence of it. Project Avalon is evidence of it. Everybody that's contributing to this discussion on a global scale is evidence of that.
That's interesting. That's so interesting. Like, but
anyway, that's the final word for me. So go ahead.
Well, I just want to say we got to get into that more sometime. That's a whole other podcast. If I didn't have to do another show, I'd dive deep into that too. But I mean, just real quick, like, do you think they're doing it to positively affect the culture, or negatively, or both? I mean, is
it's
it
both.
Okay? All
It's
right.
both. And when you see contactees that have conflicting stories with each other and they begin feuding, you've had one of these people on your show recently. When you see people getting conflicting information and feuding with each other, that would be the negative side of this, or some of it, because what they do is they use some starseed influencers are used to put out false information mixed with truth, and
Wow.
others are used for, there's a certain disinformation ratio in everybody's message. No one's immune to it, because that's the way the program is designed. The reason why they're mixing falsehoods and truth together is so that we, the experiencers, the receptive audience, because the star seeds are the receptive audience, the primary audience to this first, then the rest of the population begins to catch on, and then we aid them. And that's the way this works. The reason they're given false information and truth is to challenge our intuition and our critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And it's part of the awakening process. So the positive and the negative actually work together for a positive purpose, but you also have a very negative element involving the attack side of this. That's a whole different show, and that's really some really nasty stuff. And people are dying, people are getting hurt, and people are being emotionally traumatized from it. And it's unfortunately the way this is. And that's because there's a stage battle between light and darkness going on this planet. You see it all around. In predictive programming that's put in holy books, they refer to it as the end times. Humanity has two choices. It can save itself, or it can succumb to the New World Order, and then they're going to reboot the planet and start this whole thing over again, and try it again, and try to get us to the point of technological sophistication, which is when we step up to this level, and then we have to make a decision. Are we going to save ourselves again? Because they're going to engineer an attempt at another New World Order after the cataclysm and after the rebuilding process. Wow. So it'll all start again, and we have one shot at this right now, and that's why this is so critical. That's why we need better management with star seeds, and we need to step it up, because humanity needs to save itself. That's really the final word here.
That is. And I'll let people think about that, and then we'll get into the next podcast, maybe sooner than later. I think maybe we should do it sooner. So if you have more thoughts you want to get out, like, you can come on my show and you can get them out. I'd love to talk to you. I love talking to you. We have really engaging discussions, and I think we get like really far, and I think people are really hungry for this information. So I think it'll go a long way. I really do. I hope it does. That's my goal.
I think it will. And, because Elizabeth April told me this, she said this is going to have widespread appeal. And I don't know what this information is, but it's going to appeal to a large segment of the population. I think the word she said was widespread appeal. Everything Elizabeth April told me was through HealBead, my guide. And I was told it was based on a long-term, what you call a time projection. What they do is they look forward in time, and they use a very advanced computer system to do this. It accesses the collective consciousness. And like I was talking about the timelines, well, within a timeline, like the stick here, you have any type of, the further you go, okay, the best way to look at this, you think of this as a yardstick with little incremental measurements on it. Each one of those is a variable. The longer the stick, the more variables you have. The longer the stick, the longer the length of time that it represents. So the further you look out into time, the less accurate the prediction is. And what this is doing is looking into it and factoring statistically what the chance is for each potential outcome. So it was a long-term projection, and so I don't know if I'm going to actually fulfill that. If I can't find somebody to help me with this and take this website over, I'm not going to be here, and at some point I won't be able to pay the web hosting bill, and the website goes away. If I write a book, which I don't know if I've got enough time to do that, I could do like what some other contactees have done and create a free PDF, and hopefully people will circulate it. It's hard to say. I don't have time or the health to get a book published.
Well, that's why I said you can keep coming on my show, and I'll share it, and you can share these videos too. You can upload them. I don't care. Yours as they are, as much as mine. But I'll at least put them out, and maybe some of the audience will get a hold of you and maybe want to join in with your cause. Like I'm hoping they will. I'm hoping somebody, like somebody that has the time that can devote that's a contactee as well that might want to team up with you and do this, Yeah,
I have to get to know the person first. Elizabeth actually warned me against that. She goes, make sure that when, people come to you and say they can do this or that, you got to make sure they're of the highest vibrational frequency, is what she said. And it's true. It has to be the right person. I do have the right person, but something's gone wrong with him. I don't know what it is. Health problem, an attack. It's just, it's out of my reach until I hear from him. So hopefully I hear from him. But if there's anybody out there that wants to contact me, you can find my email address through my YouTube channel, or it's just Hajayan contactee at voicesoforion.com. I will keep that address unless I change the name of the project, at which point it'll be all over my YouTube channel. So you'll be able to find out if I've changed it or not. And that depends on whether or not I get help. If I don't, I'm just going to run with what I've got because it sounds good. The Orion part of it throws some people off. But I wanted to mention one last thing is that I was told that the conflict with this Orion group and the existence of the Orion group is all on this other timeline. That's a very controversial statement, so I'll just leave it at that. But, we're on a different timeline than the SSP, and things are a bit different. And the actual secret space program on this timeline is much, much more restricted. That's all I know about it, and I don't know if I'm going to get any other information about that. It's much different than what it is in the SSP. That's a completely different timeline as well. And I was told in this timeline, the Orion group doesn't exist. Those groups or those worlds were incorporated into the GF. The reptilians are under some type of a attention-based kind of like, it's like USA and Russia working together on a space program, or working together on some initiative. There's some friction there, but I was told that they do joint projects together to maintain a certain level of interaction where they maintain the peace, and they work on joint projects for the greater good of each other. It prevents wars from taking place because they have a very top-heavy authoritarian structure. It's basically controlled by a Draco royal bloodline. And when there's bad decisions made by the royal bloodline, there isn't anyone to call them out and to question whether or not it's a logical and moral thing to do. So you have one side, it's very, it's all a bunch of councils. It's everybody has a say. It's very democratic in a sense, but then you have an authoritarian side. So you're always it adds to the chances of significant contact. So it's much better to work together. Of course, this is an incredibly controversial thing to say, and people are going to say, oh, that's not true. But you have to remember that everything, all the information we get on the actual true nature of this timeline is based on what the ETs tell us.
Yeah.
And they tell us different things that conflict. So there you go. You need to keep an open mind with this and be a perpetual student.
That's well said.
Never, and by the way, never turn your back on somebody because they're getting like a completely new information set. They're being told something that contradicts. Never turn your back on another human being because an extraterrestrial told you to. Follow your intuition and your heart and treat people with respect and love. And you won't, and that'll lessen the chance of being led astray, and you won't be caught up in some sort of celebrity star seed feud that takes place on YouTube where one person is pointing at the other and saying, you're with the enemy now and you don't even know any better. I'm not talking to you anymore, and don't go watch their material because they're being lied to. That is the absolute last thing that people should do to each other. We should be coming together out of mutual love and respect and work together to find the truth collectively. It's not just for one person. It's not just for me. It comes from everybody collectively. And we need to start acting the way we need to act so that we can change this world and make a positive difference.
Well said. That's very well said.